Hey everybody, my name is Kelly Pajic from 100 State, and this is Office Talk, a series of videos that I do where I interview our member community as well as other entrepreneurs in the Madison ecosystem who I really feel are making a difference, both in our community with entrepreneurs, as human beings in general, trying to dive in a little deep and asking the questions that most people don't ask, or most people really don't even know about the interviewee. In this episode today, I have Will Robus from Outpost Security, which is a cybersecurity company, and Will is one of the co-founders and a member here at 100 State. In the interview, Will gives me a little bit about his background, his education, how he started in entrepreneurship, and then how he started Outpost Security. I love this interview because Will shares a little bit about the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations, the struggles that an entrepreneur has and how one overcomes those struggles. So here's the interview. Will, first things first is you are a member here at 100 State, so we love having you in the building. How did you come into 100 State? How long have you been a member here?
Oh, well, actually, the first time I was in 100 State was shortly after it opened. So when it was actually at 100 State. Okay. They had a couple of, kind of events where there's sort of like meetup events, community events, like brainstorming things. So I've always been a fan of the co-working concept. I think I was working with the university at that time. So when 100 State start? Do you remember the first
2013?
one? I think in 2013 it probably had like Moonlight startup that we worked on. So I've always been part of the Madison startup community. I love co-working as a concept. 100 State was the first one, or the first kind of like, one that stuck around. So when we started Outpost Security in 2019, the obvious choice was to become members at 100 State and make 100 State our, headquarters, mailing address, all that. Since Outpost Security started, we've been 100 State members.
I want you to talk about Outpost Security and what you do with your company, but before that, what is your professional background like? Go to college? Did you work somewhere else before that? And how did you get into the entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I think I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit and bug. I went to UW-Madison. So I grew up like Watertown, Conowalk area, and then actually got a scholarship to come to UW-Madison. And I went to the business school and got a finance major. Okay. And I'm going to date myself, but I graduated in 2003, kind of right after the big .com bubble burst. I mean, when I was a freshman in college, I was reading books about IPOs because that was when all the crazy, .com IPOs were hitting the scene. And then by 2003, it all like disappeared and dried up. So it was a little challenging for me to get a finance position that year. Okay. So I actually happened to be working at a university research department through college. Okay. And they had some big projects come in, and essentially they offered me a full-time position after I graduated, thinking that I would be there for a year or two until I found, until the market opened up a little bit and I, found a more traditional finance role. But yeah, that was kind of the beginning of my very unorthodox career path, and I ended up working for the university for almost 15 years. About 12 of those were at this department called Space Science and Engineering. So I took my business and numbers kind of training and skill set and worked on kind of project management and program management and things like that for building all kinds of crazy stuff, like a laser that got shot up into the sky to count photons for aerosol clouds, part of the big Ice Cube project, which is a neutrino detector in the South Pole. I mean, I basically got like a street degree in all things engineering. So, the department did a lot of data work and computer work because all these instruments created all this data and they had to analyze it. Crazy kind of experience. But one of the reasons I stayed there for so long is because it was pretty flexible. Oh, okay. And so I got to have, a lot of flexibility in kind of my side projects and side hustles. So I pursued entrepreneurial things using kind of my free time. Led me to Outpost and creating the company that we have.
You said you graduated in 2003. You were on the entrepreneurial scene at that point, right? How do you feel entrepreneurship was then compared to how it is now?
Back then it was pretty underground. Business school had a business plan competition, and they still do. It still exists in various iterations. The Tech Council had their business plan competition, and of course their entrepreneurship conference and all those things. So, there was a scene, but it was very fragmented. I actually did an internship for a angel investment group that kind of preceded WIP, Wisconsin Investment Partners. Yep. So, it was definitely the early days. Since then, kind of the national entrepreneurship startup scene has grown a lot, and we've seen parts of that in Madison with like Generator and some, but yeah. So it was pretty small, and it was pretty fragmented back then, and then then we kind of had an influx of all the different groups and kind of things, and so we're a little disjointed. I still participate in Capital Entrepreneurs. I think that's a really great group because it's really focused on actual founders. The Tech Council is great, and all these entrepreneurship things are great. And I'm trying to think back, like that was a long time ago. But kind of some of the foundations are still there. The path of taking and starting with an idea and trying to build it out into a company.
In entrepreneurship, it's like sometimes it feels like an uphill battle, and you're really passionate about this idea, and you want to try to get it out there in the world. You're trying to win people over to your idea.
Yeah, that's probably the most exhausting thing. At the end of the day, you're asking people to change. People don't want to change. It's hard to change, and even if what they're doing today isn't the best thing, the smartest thing, or even if it's painful, they have to decide that it's worth the effort. That in and of itself makes anything you do as an entrepreneur difficult and makes it take a lot longer.
What kept you going? What kept you motivated and inspired to keep going?
Be perfectly honest, like the only thing that has kept us going is that the customers we've worked with, we've seen and felt the changes and how important and valuable it is, and like that's how we know we're doing the right thing and we're on the right path. We had that success with our very first customer like four and a half years ago. But everything since then has all been, all right, how do we get people to go down this path of change?
Tell me about Outpost Security. How did you get into it? What is it? How did you get into it? What are you guys up to?
Outpost Security, we are a boutique defensive cybersecurity firm. So what that means is we're small. Most companies have a security monitoring program. So they are continuously monitoring everything in their IT environment. And the reason they do that is to look for bad things, like people trying to hack in or employees trying to do things they're not supposed to. One of the big data platforms for monitoring is called Splunk, and it ingests all of the raw log data and raw text files that track all these things, right? All emails, web browsing, firewall stuff, everything that you do with a computer and a network, they bring in that information. So Splunk has a security product that helps people write detections, they're called. So they're looking through all this data to try to find bad things, and then they generate alerts, which usually a person has to look at and say, all right, this is something bad that we need to respond to, or hey, this is just business as usual, we can ignore it. Naturally, that's really, really difficult because there are terabytes of data a day, especially in large organizations. Okay. So what we do is we write software for Splunk to help those companies find the bad things much faster with much higher accuracy. My co-founder came from Fortune 500, and he did this work, figured out this really clever way to do it effectively, do it at scale, and that's what he gave a talk about it at Splunk's conference, and that was 2018. and that talk got a lot of kind of viral popularity. And then we started Outpost in 2019, essentially to help implement this or a version of this in as many companies as possible. Started October of 2019, so like 5 or 6 months before COVID lockdown started. We were fortunate to have our first customer by then and implemented, so at least we could tell a success story as we tried to get more customers. But we've so Splunk is Cisco just bought Splunk for $28 billion in cash. So Splunk's a large company, now larger with Cisco, but we've started with them because we knew the product really well, and then we've stayed with them because it's a really good architecture. It scales well. From a getting data standpoint, it's nobody's better, including Microsoft doesn't get close, Google doesn't get close, really? Because Splunk can take in the data from everywhere. And the third part about that is Splunk is in 95 of the Fortune 100s, so it's got a really big install base. The company itself, the product itself, has been around for almost like 20 years. So because of all of the Splunk customers, we've been able to work with some very large companies, Fortune 50 company, household names. We see our customers' logos on the courts of the NBA playoff teams, and so we've got nice. We're small and boutique, but we've kind of out punched our weight class ever since we started. So, and we kind of started with big companies, which usually startups don't do that because there's a lot more complexity and risk, but that was the experience we had, so that's where we started.
Do you feel like you'll be going into a different direction at some point?
The product essentially hasn't changed since our first implementation. What has changed is how we try to communicate it, how we try to get the customer to kind of believe this is the path forward, to kind of instigate that change. We've created a lot of smaller products. Our key product now is kind of a light version of our first product, but it does what most companies need in a very short period of time. So it's basically just been kind of go-to-market strategy stuff. Part that makes cybersecurity really challenging. It's a very young industry.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's only a couple decades old, if you will. I mean, these just are large, complex networks, and the internet, whether it's the global internet or the internal internet in a company, it's designed for computers to communicate and transmit data. So it's the opportunity for abuse is kind of prevalent. So it's a young industry. Technology moves really quickly, and there's just a lot of products and solutions from a security perspective that are snake oil. They just don't work. They take kind of the wrong approach. Investment dollars fly into cybersecurity companies without really vetting, hey, is this actually an improvement? Things like that. So it's really noisy. I mean, there's a lot of money in it, and it's really noisy from a marketing space. So for a small company like us, it's really challenging to get attention. Getting to the customer has been our biggest challenge. But again, we've basically just tried to do good work in the customers we have and share those stories. And we've worked with different partners, and we work very closely with Splunk, and sometimes Splunk is our best friend, and sometimes they're our biggest enemy / competitor. So, it's kind of that we're playing a very big competitive game, which is pretty unique, I think, from a small startup standpoint. Especially we're bootstrapped; we haven't taken any investment yet.
What's your favorite thing about your company and the job you do?
The ability for us to maneuver and do new things is very fun. I mean, it's stressful and overwhelming at times because it's like, all right, whatever we do has to work because we can't really afford. I mean, we can make experiments and have failures, but by and large, we only have so much time to be successful. Otherwise, we can't make enough money to live. But we've been able to make a lot of smart bets and develop, solutions and even little things to help get the customer from where they are to where they want to be, and almost like kind of get them out of their own way sometimes. Interact with other, with different companies or different partners, or even like some of the salespeople we work with. Like, we realize how different or how what we've put together and built, even from a process standpoint, before you even get to the product that we sell, that it is quite valuable, and like we're able to do what we do very well and effectively. You get to have that little outside perspective and be like, oh wow, this is something that the customers really need and doesn't really exist anywhere else, especially in the way we do it. You know, our goal has always been, what we want to do from a security perspective is beat them. Yeah. But we have to beat them every day, every time, right?
Yeah.
So, in our charge and delivering that impact and enough times that we know that we can kind of continually repeat it. Right? We've proven that I think we can be successful. Now we're at the phase where, all right, how do we expand that and scale that? As an entrepreneur, every time you get sort of a chapter closed or like something figured out, you know, you have a new set of challenges. Yeah. But that's the
exciting part.
The never-ending fun part. That's why it's kind of addictive, right?
Well, you really seem passionate about what you do, and I really appreciate you sharing all your background and your story. It was really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
I'm excited to share this.
100 State is our home and it always has been, and so we appreciate what you've been doing. And
oh, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
It's a big deal. So we appreciate it. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you.